Alright guys, we are back with a video that I think is very exciting. We have a Blue Eyes tier list. You guys have been literally begging me to make this video. I've been getting hit up more than like an Instagram model. Every day somebody's been hitting me up going, Blue Eyes, do the Blue Eyes tier list. It's here. I'm finally doing it. Additionally, I've got some really good news. I've actually made a combo video for Blue Eyes, including all of the new support that's coming out, which is going to show a bunch of different combos that you can do in that deck. The new support is really good. I go over it in the combo video, so if you want to see that, that's also going to be on the channel sometime this week alongside this video. But before we get started, do you play Master Duel? And if you do, would you like to make your Master Duel experience a whole lot better?
Are you ready to take your Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel play experience to a new level? The Untapped GG Companion is here for you. Use the deck tracker to know exactly what cards you have in your deck, and to go over any cards you aren't familiar with yet by hovering over them. It instantly updates when you draw a card, and automatically hides if you check your extra deck or graveyard. This is the perfect tool to help you master a new deck. The Untapped GG Companion also lets you import decks directly into the game in seconds. Copy any YDK or YDKE deck string, create a new deck in game, click the Start Auto Import button, and let us take the wheel. Once the duel is over, check your win rate on your personal stats page. Brag among your friends and share your decks so they can import them into the game too. Start your path to master today by downloading the Untapped GG Companion at ygom.untapped.gg.
Alright guys, enough wasting time goofing off. Let's get this video started. We've got Blue Eyes here. The Blue Eyes has gotten a ton of new support that's actually really good. Like really actually good support. Definitely worth discussing. Hopefully they don't suddenly release more out of nowhere and then I have to redo this video. But I think this should cover it. I don't think that they're going to drop random Blue Eye support. I think they've already done that with the Magia and stuff like that. But here's the tier list. We've also redone the way the tier list looks. So now there's a little bit nicer of a rubric, as you can see here. So we've got best, good, mostly play, tech choice, bad tech choice, and horrible. That way it's a little more consistent in where I'm putting these cards and why they belong in the tiers that they are. But let's get started. First, we've got Blue Eyes Ultimate. Blue Eyes Ultimate is basically a vanilla monster. Requires 3 Blue Eyes. You fuse it and you make Blue Eyes Ultimate. There's a ton of ways to summon this card, honestly. I can't rate it too high, but I can't really rate it too low either, because it is definitely used. You need it to make Magia, but at the same time you just kind of use it to make Magia. You don't actually summon it and use the card by any means. You just kind of it's just kind of like a means to an end. It's like a card you have to play in your deck if you want to play Magia, but you don't need to play the card. Like you very rarely ever hard summon a Blue Eyes Ultimate ever. There's just very low scenarios. You have a card called Fusion Armament that can let you cheat out a Blue Eyes Ultimate onto the field. But other than that card, I don't think that there's much. I'd say it's a C tech choice. If you're playing Magia, you kind of have to include this in your extra deck. But I can't really rate it in D or F, because as a card itself, it's kind of not great. But overall, I think it's just needed in the overall deck. Also, you can technically play Fusion Armament and play like a Blue Eyes control variant of it, where you just summon the ultimate. You have a 4500 attack monster, you just throw it out onto the board. It can definitely be very useful for you. Also, if you're playing like a stun trap version of the deck, I think that this definitely can come in handy. Again, you throw this out with Fusion Armament, 4500 attack, and from a variety of standpoints, it's just a very good card. You can use it with all of the various trap cards, and the card actually is quite decent on its own. Okay, next is Dragon Master Knight. I think this card is actually horrible. It's not a good card at all. It doesn't even say Blue Eyes in the name. Basically, the fusion is Blackluster Soldier and Blue Eyes Ultimate, which are two cards that aren't exactly like easy to summon to begin with. But I guess you could use some of the newer Blue Eyes cards to put Blue Eyes Ultimate into the graveyard, and then you can use maybe a Dragon's Mirror to fuse them together. But again, I don't even think that's honestly worth it to make this card, because this card's effect is that it gains 500 for each dragon monster you control except this card. This one is the Dragon Master Knight is 5000 attack, and then it gains 500. So at most, this card is going to have, what is that, 7000 attack at most. So if you have to have 4 dragons and this thing on the field, actually technically it's 2500 more, so technically it's 7500 is the most that they could have. But honestly, I don't think this is worth it. Blue Eyes is not a deck in any way that is like dying to have strong high level monsters. high attack point monsters. Blue Eyes already does that. Are the regular Blue Eyes summons are like 3,000 attack. You aren't like struggling to summon strong monsters in this deck, and this is just a card that is such a win more card. You really do not need to play it. All right, next up is Dragon Master Magia. Now this card is a little interesting. It's kind of difficult to review. As of recording this video, it's like a $900 card, so there's not a ton of play testing on it because very few people even own it. But playing it online, you can get an idea of what it should be. This card is fairly good in the combo version of the deck. It's a great boss monster to end on. Basically what it requires is a Blue Eyes Ultimate or 3 Blue Eyes monsters plus a Chaos or Blackluster Soldier ritual monster. So it basically is kind of like a redone version of Dragon Master Knight. So it's kind of like it's just in every way a better version of this card right here. Its effects are actually very good. So effect number 1 is that it can basically negate a monster, spell, and trap every single turn, no cost whatsoever. You don't have to discard anything, you have to banish anything. You just straight up trap card, negate it, spell card, negate it, monster card, negate it every single turn. That is insane. That is actually like a really, really great payoff for a ton of cards that you have to sink into this. That is 100% worth it. The other effect that it has is when this card leaves the field for any reason, it floats basically into either a chaos monster that is a chaos ritual monster, or it floats into a Blue Eyes extra deck monster or a graveyard monster, either one. It floats into, out of your extra deck or graveyard, which both effects are pretty decent, the floating and the other one. The card that you generally want to float into is the alternative Ultimate Dragon. This is just one of the better cards to float into, but this card is fairly good. I'd say it's tough to review. I'd say it's probably like a good card. It seems, honestly, from playtesting with it, like a little bit of a win more card. It's the kind of card you have to kind of go out of your way to summon. Now, you can cheat it out because there's a new card that lets you cheat it out fairly easily. There's a new card called Wishes for Eyes of Blue, which this is like a brand new card. If some of the names change, these are OCG names that I'm using. The cards haven't technically come out in the US yet. So Wishes with Eyes of Blue actually allows you to essentially equip a extra deck Blue Eyes card to a Blue Eyes monster that you control. So that effect allows you to get Blue Eyes Ultimate into your graveyard, which makes it so much easier to actually summon the Dragon Master Magia. It's like a million times easier, because then you could just Ultimate Fusion and summon this super duper duper easily. And that is actually quite nice. But again, as of right now, as of recording this video, if I was making this video today, I would say this is probably in a Blue Eyes deck, probably a tech choice. But with the new support, I'd say it's probably good. It's definitely a card that you want to play. It is a little bit of a win more card because you're already ending on a board with so many negates. It's not really like a starter. It's more of just another like multi-negate card that you're throwing onto the board. That's the only kind of issue that I have with the card. You have to a little bit go out of your way to summon it, but for the most part, I think it's a very, very strong card. All right, next up is Blue Eyes Alternative Ultimate Dragon. This is another kind of interesting card. I think this card is, I think a safe place to put it would be, I think this is a C. This is a tech choice. It used to be a higher up, but now it's more of a tech choice. It's pretty easy to make, honestly, but it's not. Sometimes the payoff isn't worth it. Basically, what it does is you have to fuse 3 Blue Eyes to make it. So it's basically a redone version of the regular Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon. It has an awesome effect where you can target a card your opponent controls and destroy it. But if you used an alternative, a Blue Eyes Alternative Dragon to make this card, you can destroy up to 3 cards. Also, this card can be destroyed by card effects or targeted by card effects. Generally speaking, this is the card that you want to float into with the effect of Magia, because you could just float right into this, and this card overall is fairly good. It can't be destroyed by card effects, can't be targeted, and it's just another boss monster that your opponent has to deal with. Just something to keep in mind, if you're looking for this card on Master Duel, it doesn't exist. This card is not on Master Duel. For some reason, I don't know, maybe we can get into it one day, but this card is not on Master Duel. Overall, I think it's kind of like a tech choice. You float into it, but I don't think it's like an outrageously good card that you have to include in every single Blue Eyes build. It's just kind of an okay tech choice. All right, next is Neo Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon. This is yet another retrain of Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon. It's another card that I'd say is probably like a C tech choice. All three of these are C tech choices, depending on which direction you kind of build with the deck. If you're building this deck and you don't even want to play the Blue Eyes Ultimate or the Magia, this is a card you generally want to include, because again, you can use it to attach to a Blue Eyes White Dragon with the wishes. And by doing that, you basically put this in the graveyard. This card has a variety of different useful effects. First things first, it's the same as making a Blue Eyes Ultimate. All three of these are. You just fuse 3 Blue Eyes White Dragons and you get this. Again, I don't know if you want to sink that many resources in, especially even with whether you're using Dragon's Mirror or Ultimate Fusion. You don't really want to shuffle back that many Blue Eyes. Blue Eyes is good in your graveyard. You don't want to shuffle Blue Eyes back. So that's, I think, the major issue with both Alternative Ultimate Dragon and Neo Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon, because you generally don't want to shuffle back your Blue Eyes White Dragon, especially 3 of them. That takes a lot of setup. So this card's on-field effect is if you attack with it, it's the only card on your field. You can send another Blue Eyes monster from your extra deck to the graveyard, and then you get another attack, and you could do that twice. And that's not only on monsters, that is just in general. So this card can, in theory, OTK sometimes, but again, it has to be the only card that you control in order to use that effect. Also has another effect that I think is a little bit better, which is if this card's in the graveyard and your opponent activates a card that targets a Blue Eyes monster that you control, you can banish it from the graveyard and then negate that effect and destroy that card, which is also important. That is actually a pretty good effect, because you can basically use wishes, attach it to any Blue Eyes, link that Blue Eyes away, synchro that Blue Eyes away, do whatever you want with that Blue Eyes. This goes to graveyard, and now you basically have protection for your Blue Eyes cards as you kind of like do your combos, which actually can be useful and can come up. So if you're not playing Magia, this is definitely a card you want to include in your extra deck. But as far as using like its on-field effects and stuff like that, I would generally stay away from it. Next is Blue Eyes Twin Burst Dragon. This is a card that I think it's good. It's a part of the old guard of Blue Eyes cards. It was very, very good a few years ago, but I think it's definitely at the point where it's a little bit power crept. It can definitely be good in certain matchups. So if you're playing against like Yubel, for example, this card can come up against Yubel or maybe Makenko or something like that. It definitely can come up in those matchups. But basically what this card does is it's just 2 Blue Eyes White Dragons. It only has 2 heads. Basically, and what's also awesome about it is it's a contact fusion. You only have to use 2 Blue Eyes White Dragons, and it's a contact fusion, and you can also use alternative because it also counts as a Blue Eyes White Dragon. It is a contact fusion, so you don't have to play any polymerizations or anything like that, or ultimate fusions, anything. You don't have to play any fusion cards because it is a contact fusion, and that is kind of a useful aspect of it. What also is cool is that it has 2 attacks on monsters, 1 for each of its heads. That's also pretty useful. And then if it battles an opponent's monster and that monster is not destroyed, you can banish it at the end of the damage step, meaning that it can out monsters that are difficult to out. Maybe a monster that can't be destroyed by battle, or a monster that, you know, has a bunch of attack. Like let's say, for example, you're playing the Mirror and your opponent has an alternative Ultimate Dragon on the field. You can attack with Twin Burst, take 15 damage, and then end of the damage step banish it, because the banish is non-targeting. So it definitely can come up. Same thing against Yubel. You attack, take some damage, banish it at the end of the damage step, attack again, banish it at the end of the damage step. It actually is, same thing with Makenko. It actually is useful. You take some damage, but you are getting rid of their card and you're banishing them. That is actually kind of useful. The downside is your extra deck space is tighter than it's ever been. Unless you're playing super duper pure Blue Eyes, I think this is also a tech choice. I don't think Blue Eyes can really be played as a pure, competitively, as a pure fusion deck. You have to kind of mix the Synchros and the Xyz and the Links and all of the new cards that have come out. I don't think you should really be playing it pure, but if you wanted to, all of the fusion cards are kind of decent in Blue Eyes, and it's cool. Alright, next is Blue Eyes Tyrant Dragon. I think that this card is slightly better than all of these other Blue Eyes cards. I think it's probably in B tier. It's a mostly played card. If you look at most extra decks for Blue Eyes, this is going to be in there. It's one of the better cards to summon with Ultimate Fusion if you're not summoning Magia. Also, you don't even need to run. What makes this card even more broken is you don't even need to run the Ultimate Fusion to summon this card. You can summon it without it. So here's how this card works. Basically, it's a Blue Eyes White Dragon, the regular Blue Eyes, or alternative if it's on the field, and a dragon monster. Those are the only 2 requirements. Super duper easy to fulfill. It can be any dragon too. And that helps too if you're using Ultimate Fusion, because you can recycle certain Blue Eyes cards. Also, This card's effects are that you can also summon it by tributing a Blue-Eyes White Dragon that has a fusion monster equipped to it. Not equipped to it as material, but equipped to it. So again, you can use this Wishes card to, this card right here, its graveyard effect, to equip one of these Blue-Eyes, like you can equip the Neo Blue-Eyes to it, and then basically you have this equipped to it. You basically just tribute the Blue-Eyes equipped with this. This goes to graveyard. You summon Tyrant out onto the field, and you essentially get a Tyrant by getting rid of one Blue-Eyes White Dragon. Now, what does Tyrant do? It's unaffected by trap cards, so it's great in certain matchups. It depends really what matchup, but it's great in, like, Labyrinth matchup, a Floodgate matchup. It can be really good because it's unaffected by trap cards. Also, this card can attack all monsters your opponent controls. It's 3,400 attack. It's nothing to, like, sneeze. It's decent attacks. 3,400 attacks all monsters your opponent controls. That really isn't bad. It can definitely end games, especially with the fact that you can just very easily, equip to it, and it's just very easy to pull off. And then also, at the end of the damage step, when this card battles, you can target a trap card in your graveyard and then set it back to the field. That is also another awesome effect to it, because you can set back some of these really good cards like True Light and Ultimate Creature of Destruction, and this new card right here. You can also set back the Majesties with Dragons of White. You can also set that card back for free. But if you're playing a control version of the deck, which I've kind of hinted at a few different times, this is definitely an amazing card, because if you summon this card and then activate Skill Drain, this card doesn't even get Skill Drain, so you can just reset your trap cards over and over and over and over again. Of course, if Skill Drain is on the field first, then this gets negated, but this card is unaffected by trap cards, and it can be really, really great in the control version of the deck. I'd say, yep, B tier, mostly played. It's in most extra decks in Blue-Eyes, even ones that are looking to just combo off with the Synchros, because it's too easy to summon and kind of dumb to not play. Alright, next is Blue-Eyes Ultimate Spirit Dragon. This is where the first new card that we're... Actually, technically, Magia is the first new card. This card is insane. This card is actually a negate that is in archetype that is really easy to summon. It easily goes into S tier. You are probably going to be making it every single game. Every single variant of the deck is playing this. This card is very, very good. What does it do? Basically, it is a level 12 Synchro monster that requires 2 tuners and 1 non-tuner Blue-Eyes monster. Generally speaking, you're not going to be hard summoning it, but if you wanted to hard summon it, theoretically you could. All you'd have to use is the Neo Kaiser Seahorse, drop its level by 1, and any one of the level 1 tuners. If you did that, plus a Blue-Eyes, you can make this, but generally speaking, I would avoid that and just summon it off of the Blue-Eyes Spirit Dragon. It's a million times better. I wouldn't recommend summoning it off of that effect, because that requires 3 cards to get into 1 monster, when you can easily do far more by opening those cards. So this card is very, very strong for that, for just in how easy it is to summon, because it's basically a light dragon synchro monster, so you can just cheat it out with Spirit. But here are its effects. It has a continuous effect that is kind of like a Floodgate protection effect, where your opponent cannot banish cards in your graveyard. That is insane. You can target cards in your opponent's graveyard, but they can't target cards in your graveyard. If this is on the field, they can't even, like, they can't even use Call by the Grave against you. They can't use Call by the Grave. They can't TD Crow. They can't use any Bestials whatsoever to target any of your Blue-Eyes monsters. This card has some amazing protection for your graveyard, and it's technically kind of like a Floodgate, because if they can't banish cards out of your graveyard, they may not be even able to summon their Bestials, which is actually quite nice. Also, it's got another effect where if your opponent activates a card, you can negate that effect, and then this card gains 1000 attack. That's, again, pretty good. It's just a free negate that you get. Your Spirit Dragon becomes that much more versatile. It used to be Spirit Dragon was just something that you could go into, like a Black Rose Moonlight Dragon. Now you can go into an actual negate that is also a simultaneous Floodgate. Next, it has another effect where if this card's destroyed, which remember, the Spirit Dragon destroys at the end of the turn that it summons the monster, so it destroys this at the end. You can actually, once this card gets destroyed, you can special summon a light dragon monster from your graveyard. That is any light dragon. It includes any card summoned by, that could potentially be summoned by a Spirit Dragon, but also, more importantly, it includes any Blue-Eyes dragon that you want. That is actually really good. This card is exactly what the deck needed. It's a great boss monster. I'm very, very, very excited to play it. Alright, next is Yugioh Silver Dragon. This card is, I kind of need to put this in text choice now. This card has been really powerful. Again, the extra deck space is really tight. There are a lot of cards on this tier list that are completely in different spots. This is insane how much the new support has changed where cards are placed, because there are cards that I used to put in S tier that are now in like C and D tier, and there are cards that used to be in D tier that are now in like S tier. It's insane to me how much things have actually changed on this tier list. But here we've got the Yugioh-Eyes, and Yugioh-Eyes is in C tier mostly because its effects are just kind of okay now. It's another card that you could tag out with Spirit Dragon, but again, when you can summon this, which is a negate and a floodgate and all of the other things I just spoke about, this becomes so much worse to summon. Basically what this does is it essentially protects all the dragons. When it's summoned, it protects all the dragons that are on the field at that time. Now the danger with this card is, like, let's say your opponent activates Raigeki and you're like, oh no, let me chain my Spirit Dragon. Those cards are still going to be destroyed by card effect. You have to do this preemptively. So you remember, this card activates on summon, and if your opponent activates Raigeki, you chain Spirit Dragon, this gets summoned, and then your monsters blow up. It doesn't have an opportunity to activate. So you have to understand that effect is, while it's good, you have to do it in advance. Has another effect where during the standby phase, you can target a normal monster in your graveyard and special summon it. Generally, you'll be summoning a regular Blue-Eyes White Dragon every single standby phase. But again, that is kind of slow. The point of this deck now is just to put as many negates onto the board and then kind of go from there. You're not trying to play this like grind game over a few turns. It's just not what the deck is trying to do. So for that reason, I think this card is more of like a tech choice now, but I don't think it's one of the like definite inclusions by any means into the deck. Next is Spirit Dragon. This card is insane. It may actually be the best card in the entire archetype. I kid you not. It started off good, and then it kind of fell off during Link format because you had to basically summon a Link first, then you can go into your Synchros, and it kind of fell off after a little while, and also people weren't summoning simultaneously. This card is insane. Like, if there was ever a card, if Blue Eyes ever gets out of control and they need to hit the deck, this is the card that they need to hit. This card cheats out so many things. It's almost unfair, to be honest with you. So basically, this is what this card does. It requires one tuner and one non-tuner Blue Eyes monster, so it's extremely easy to summon. It has a multitude of different effects. Neither player, number one, can summon two monsters simultaneously. Your deck never does that, but other decks definitely do that. It stops pendulum summoning. It stops the graveyard effect of the Flameburge, for example, the Snake Eye Flameburge, because they summon two at the same time. It stops the graveyard effect of a variety of different cards. It's actually it stops pendulums. It stops Sword Soul, for example. That effect definitely comes up. It's another kind of like floodgate-ish effect. It occasionally comes up. It's not always going to come up, but as long as you can be mindful about it, it can actually stop your opponents a lot. Secondly, it has a graveyard negate. It can negate any graveyard effect, yours or your opponent's, and that's important because sometimes your opponent will destroy True Light, and you can just chain your own Spirit Dragon to negate your own True Light and stop your own cards from getting destroyed. Actually kind of crazy. And then it has its last effect, which is by far its best effect, which is that it can tag out into any light synchro dragon monster and summon it in defense mode. It destroys it during the end phase, but that's irrelevant because you can do a million different things with it. The pool for light synchro dragons has just been growing and growing and growing, and it's gotten to the point where it's almost outrageous now. You can go into Crimson Dragon, which that card is absolutely broken. That's another card that should be probably banned, but you can go into that. You can go into Moonlight Dragon, Black Rose Moonlight Dragon, which used to be the classic one. You can go into an Yugioh-Eyes during your opponent's turn, and now you can go into this Blue Eyes Ultimate Spirit Dragon, which is another insane. You can go into a negate on your opponent's turn that also keeps your cards from getting banished. It's actually crazy. This might honestly be the greatest Blue Eyes card ever printed. It just does so much for the archetype. It's incredible. It really is an incredible card. All right, next is Indigo-Eyes Silver Dragon. This card was, out of all of the new support, probably the least exciting to see. I think this is probably a tech choice. I don't think this card is outrageously good. We'll go over its effects right now. It's basically a rank 8. It requires two level 8 monsters to summon. 2 level 8 dragon monsters. So specifically dragons. You have to keep that in mind. So you can maybe splash this into Galaxy Eyes, but for the most part, it's made to be a Blue Eyes card, which is nice. it has an effect where it cannot attack unless it has a normal monster as material. It cannot attack directly if it doesn't have a normal monster as material, which is like, I mean, why does that have to be on there exactly? Like, Blue Eyes has other, like, I understand, it should have said, as long as it has a Blue Eyes material that can attack directly, because you have a lot of level 8s down here that aren't normal monsters. You have one normal monster and then a bunch of non-normal monsters. As long as they're Blue Eyes, I don't really see why that restriction had to be on there. It also has an effect where if it's Xyz summoned, as soon as it's summoned onto the field, it activates and you can negate all face-up monsters or all face-up cards your opponent controls. That is actually not a terrible card for going second. I mean, the problem is if your opponent has a floodgate on the board, it's going to be tough to even get to this card in the first place. But what is cool is that it gives you a pretty easy way to beat decks like Yubel and Mekanko, like really easy, because as soon as this hits the board, it negates all cards your opponent controls. So if they have like Nightmare Pain and a bunch of 0 attack face-up monsters, you just negate everything, and then you just attack 3 times and you win. And because this thing's 4,000 attack, every Blue Eyes is 3,000, you won the duel. Same thing with Mekanko. If they have all that stuff on the board, the equip spells, the Mekanko, this can't be destroyed, this can't be targeted, they've got all this protection back and forth, you actually can just summon this, negate everything, and now just attack them with their 0 attack monsters and you win the duel. That's cool, but I think this is more of a win more tech choice card. Its last effect is that you could detach a material and then target a normal monster in your graveyard or banished, and then special summon it. And if you do, that monster gains 1,000. That card is, again, it's pretty decent. You detach and then target another one. You have to already have one in the graveyard. So, like, let's say you have a Blue Eyes as material. You can't detach that Blue Eyes and then bring it back. You already have to have a viable target either banished or in your graveyard. So, you have to have something available in your graveyard before you even activate it. That is actually, I'd say it's a decent effect. Again, this card overall has a bunch of effects that are just okay. There's nothing about this that is like outrageously like good. The other support is just so much better. This is more of like a tech option. It's not a card you're definitely going to be including in your Blue Eyes deck, but it's not a bad card overall. Next is Spirit with Eyes of Blue. This card is like a creative card. It doesn't even seem real, to be honest with you. For years, we talked about having a Link monster, a Link Blue Eyes, and like we always had these discussions in the comments, and everyone was like, "Oh, maybe one day." It was something like you could like Google, and then you'd get like fake images of people creating like fan cards. Like no one ever thought that Blue Eyes was going to get a Link monster, and no one ever thought that Blue Eyes, the Link monster Blue Eyes was going to be getting is this good. So we'll move it up here. It's definitely in the best category. It's one of the greatest starters I've probably seen in terms of Link 1s. Link 1s in general are broken, but to have a Link 1 that's this good is kind of outrageous. It works with every one of the level 1 tuners. Basically, here's what it does. It requires a level 4 or lower dragon or spellcaster, which includes all of the Lord of D cards, includes all of the level 1 tuners that are in the deck. It also includes all of the small dragons if you're for some reason running it, like all of the level 1 small tuners, dragons, all of those. It even works with, actually it doesn't work with Kaiba, man, but it works with pretty much everything else. But basically it has a variety of different good effects. It has an effect, number 1, to search Mausoleum of White. Mausoleum of White is the field spell for Blue Eyes, which is down here. This card is outrageously good. I remember I made a deck profile based around this card years ago, like 3-4 years ago, because this card is legitimately very good. Now, the problem for years was Mausoleum of White is a phenomenal card. Great card, great synergy with the deck, but it was completely unsearchable. So in that deck, I was running 3 copies of this, terraformings. I think I was playing set rotation. I was playing every way to get to this card. And I was bricking on the multiples because, again, you're running multiples of this card. But now you actually can just search it outright. And there was no way to search this card because, again, it was called Mausoleum of White. It doesn't have Blue Eyes in its name. It doesn't have Blue Eyes in its text. You had no way to access this card. You couldn't get it with Bingo Machine Go. You couldn't get this card in any way whatsoever. Now you have a dedicated singular card searcher. You only have to run 1 of it. You don't have to run 3. Also, it lets you either send or add Mausoleum to your hand. Generally, you're going to be adding it to your hand, but you don't want to send the Mausoleum. You can send Mausoleum because you can banish it to search Burst Stream, but it's not quite as good. This is one of the most important starters in the deck. Also, it has another effect where you can tribute this card, the Spirit with Eyes of Blue, the Link monster, and then you can special summon a Blue Eyes monster from your graveyard or from your hand. any Blue Eyes monster. But if you summon an effect monster, its effects are negated, it can't attack. That's completely fine. That is totally and completely fine. It doesn't matter if that effect is on it. It's irrelevant, because you're usually just using the monster that you summon for a link summon to get into bigger plays. So as a card play starter, this card is insane. Its only drawback is that while you control this card, you can't summon anything other than dragons. So you have to be very creative about how you do these things and how you do the combos overall. But as long as you learn the combos, and I do have a combo video, like I said, coming out sometime in the similar span of this video. As long as you know how to do the combos, it really won't get in the way whatsoever. This is the card generally, if you're playing against Blue Eyes, this is the card that you want to either Effect Veiler or Imperm or anything like that. This card is generally very, very good to stop if you're playing against Blue Eyes. Next is regular Blue Eyes. I mean, I always put this in S tier, and I don't disagree with myself. It's an S tier card. Number one, artwork-wise, it's the best. Kaiba used it. He's the best. And overall, you're still running this card in your deck. Whether it's at 1 or 2 or 3, it depends on your build. I think in most of my builds, I run 2, maybe 3 copies of this. I've seen people run as low as 1, but it can get a little bit dangerous, guys. Your opponent called by the graves you, and you're done. So you don't want to deal with that. I'd say 2 copies is generally what you want to play, but this card is still very, very, very strong, even to this day. All right, next is Blue Eyes Shining Dragon. This card is another one that is kind of interesting. I think this is an F tier card. S tier artwork, F tier card. Basically what this card requires is for you to tribute a Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon, and you can special summon this card. It basically has an effect where it gains 300 for every dragon in your graveyard. That's not terrible. It can have a ton of attack. It has no protection whatsoever, other than when a card or effect is activated that targets this card, you can negate that effect. That's not terrible. Again, I think artwork-wise, this is one of the greatest cards in the game. Amazing looking. It looked fantastic in that movie. I think this card, from an artwork standpoint alone, is a beautiful card. But outside of that, I think this is kind of like an F tier horrible card. It's not one that I would use. All right, next is Deep Eyes with Deep Eyes White Dragon. I wish this card said something else like I don't know how you would word it, but this should have had Blue Eyes in the name. It's one of the issues with this card. I think this card is either a C or D tier card. It's not, all of its effects, and you'll see, aren't that bad. I'd say it's probably a D tier because it's a little bit of a bricky card. Basically, its effect is when a face-up Blue Eyes monster you control is destroyed by battle or your opponent, specifically opponent's card effect, and you have to have a dragon monster in your graveyard during this. You can special summon this card from your hand, inflict 600 for every dragon in your graveyard, which is a pretty decent effect. It could be a lot of damage because you're playing Blue Eyes, so you can sometimes end games with this card. And basically it has another effect where you can then, when this card is normal summoned, target a dragon in your graveyard. This card's attack becomes equal to that dragon. So if you have a really strong dragon, this card basically duplicates that attack. It's easy to put dragons into the graveyard that are strong, like Blue Eyes Ultimate, because again, you can use the wishes to equip it and then basically put it into the graveyard. It's really not that terrible. And then if this card is destroyed, on the field by a card effect, you can destroy all monsters your opponent controls, which is not terrible. So it's got a bunch of effects that aren't terrible, but there's a few issues with this card. Number one, it's level 10, so it doesn't work with some of the other cards, like Trade-In and stuff like that. It doesn't have Blue Eyes in its name, so it's not searchable with Bingo Machine or any of those cards. It's just something you kind of have to draw. It's not searchable with anything out. Actually, it can be searched with this dude right here. It can be searched with, I should say, her. It can be searched with her. It can be searched with the Abyss Dragon, but for the most part, it can't really be searched. So it can't be searched. It can't be reliably searched. It can't be reliably summoned because you have to rely on your opponent to destroy your cards. Like, all of the payoff is not bad, but all of the surrounding details are a little bit of an issue. It can't even be searched off of Melody. There's a lot of issues with this card. I'd say it's probably like a bad tech choice. You include one maybe, but the problem is this deck is slightly bricky already. It's less bricky than it used to be. It's slightly bricky already. So to include another giant monster that you can't summon, you have to rely on your opponent to do something. You have to have things in graveyard already. It generally, I would probably avoid this card. Next is Alternative. I never thought I would say this. Alternative used to be one of the best cards in this deck. And that's why I said the new support really mixed everything up. It changed everything about how this deck is played. Honestly, I think Alternative is probably like a C tier tech choice. I think that's insane to say because I did this maybe a year or two ago, and this was easily probably an S tier card. And now it's a tech choice. It went from a 3 of to a 2 of to a 1 of, and now it's a 0 of. Most decks do not even play this because you don't have Blue Eyes in your hand for the most part. You don't even play Melody anymore. I've been playing play testing with the deck. I don't even play Melody. I don't even play this card because generally you don't actually need this card. It's so easy to summon the regular Blue Eyes. It's not even funny. It's so easy to summon it out multiple times. You actually don't really need this, and you don't want to see Blue Eyes in your hand. You really don't have a reason to have a normal Blue Eyes in your hand, and it makes this card that much worse. Now, I will say this is better than most of the other tech choices. It's better than all of the bad tech choices. It's better than all the horrible cards. It is really good, and I almost want to put it just because of its effects in mostly played. But generally speaking, it has been cut from most Blue Eyes builds, most modern Blue Eyes builds post the structure deck. So honestly, I think that this card is probably like a C tier check choice. We didn't talk about what it does. Basically, to summon this card, you reveal a Blue Eyes White Dragon, special summon. That's an inherent summon. It's not an effect, so it can come in handy. It's just an inherent summon. Secondly, you can destroy a monster on the field, on your opponent's side of the field, but you can't attack the turn you activate this, and also it counts as Blue Eyes while it's on the field or in the graveyard. All those effects are pleasant, they're nice, but honestly, it is a card that's been power crept, and it's almost like sad to see it get power crept because it used to be such an important card to the archetype. Next is Blue Eyes Toon Dragon. This card sucks in Blue Eyes and it sucks in Toons. It is just overall not a great card. I guess it's a free special summon. If you control Toon World, you can like pay life points and tribute things. I guess it's a free special summon, but unfortunately, I don't see this card really being useful in a Blue Eyes deck in any way. I'd probably place it in Horrible. Next is Blue Eyes Jet. I think this little card looks amazing. I have 3 of these Starlight actually. I think this is probably like an A tier card. It's a good card. It used to be an S tier. I think on my last list, I put Blue Eyes Jet Dragon as the #1 Blue Eyes card, and now it's an A tier card. Again, it's like this new support really shook things up. It shook up the way the deck is played. So last time, I think the best way to play the deck was a control deck, and now that is not any longer the best way to play the deck. It's a combo deck. So we've gone from combo to control to back to combo to fusion to back to control. Now we're back at combo. This card is pretty good. It's 100% a 1 of. You can summon it for free out of the deck with a Sage, and then you don't need to play any more copies of it. Basically, this card has a bunch of different good effects on it. I would say most of the effects on this card are fairly good. While this card is on the field, other cards you control cannot be destroyed by card effects, by your opponent's card effects. That is actually really good, because if you just have this on the board, your opponent can't like Lightning Storm, they can't Raigeki. If they do Raigeki or Lightning Storm, only this card is getting destroyed. They can't Harpy's Feather Duster. They can't do any of the really destruction effects, and what's cool is it doesn't prevent them from doing it. It just prevents it from getting destroyed. So sometimes your opponent will actually go with it, right? They'll activate Raigeki, and you're like, oh, cool, nice, okay. Or they'll activate Lightning Storm, you have this guy in defense, and you're like, okay, sure, yep. And they're like, oh, aren't you going to get rid of the monsters? No, nothing can be destroyed. And you're like, can I take that back? No, you can't take that back. You activate it. It's not my fault. So it's great. It doesn't actually prevent your opponent from doing it. It just prevents your cards from getting destroyed. It's a really good effect. That's just a continuous effect that is on the card all the time. That effect is already really good. Then it has another effect where if you have a Blue Eyes White Dragon in your graveyard, you gain a few different additional effects. So you need a regular Blue Eyes White Dragon in your graveyard, and then you get these 2 effects. And one effect is if a card you control is destroyed, you can special summon this card back for free. So that is great, because there are a few different ways to pop that off. Number 1, you can pop that off using your own cards. So if you pop your own card, you can special summon this back from the graveyard for free. So this can actually work as a combo extender on your first turn. You can pop something, and then you get a free special summon. So for example, you can pop with Ancient Fairy Dragon, and then you could special summon this guy back from the graveyard free of charge. It's actually kind of insane. Also, during your opponent's turn, if your opponent pops something of yours, you get this back. So this effect is once per turn, but if you're doing it correctly, you can summon back every single turn. Also, you could pop with a Blue-Eyes Alternative Dragon and then summon this card back for free, again, every single turn. Also, it has another effect where if this card battles, you can target a card your opponent controls and bounce it back to the hand. Pretty good for dealing with floodgates, because you can, like, if your opponent has like skill drain, or there can only be one, well, not skill drain, but there can only be one, you can bounce it back to the hand, and then you can continue playing as if that card was never even on the field. It's actually really, really good. So overall, I think it's an A tier card. I don't think it's an S tier anymore, just because you're at most playing it at 1. You're not playing like 3 or maxing out on it. It's not the main point of your deck, and I've seen some people even cut this card. I think that's a little crazy, but I think that this card is probably like an A tier. Almost everyone plays at least one copy of this card to this day. Next is Heart of the Blue Eyes is basically what the next card is. I'd say this card honestly is not really usable. This card might as well be a vanilla Blue Eyes in this deck. I'm rating this not as a card in the Millennium archetype. I'm reviewing this as a card in the Blue Eyes archetype, which I think this card is not very good in the Blue Eyes archetype. I'd say it's horrible. It might as well be a vanilla monster, but unfortunately it has effects. If it was a vanilla monster, it would actually be better. So basically what this card is this is technically supposed to be the Blue Eyes that Yugi's grandpa actually used in the anime. It works with the Millennium archetype. What it does is it's always treated as a Millennium card, and then it has an effect where you can discard this card and add 1 Millennium Ankh to your hand. That card effect isn't bad for the Millennium archetype, but for Blue Eyes, that serves no purpose whatsoever, pretty much. Also, it has an effect where if this card's in the graveyard and you activated Millennium Ankh this duel, you can... your opponent summons a monster 3,000 or more attack. You can special summon this from the graveyard and then send that monster to the graveyard. That is actually not bad, but again, you have to successfully activate a copy of Millennium Ankh. So unless you're playing the Millennium cards, there's really no purpose to be playing this card. It really isn't good. If that line of text wasn't on there, I would maybe consider it. But overall, I think it's kind of a horrible card in this archetype. I guess you could, maybe it's like a bad tech choice card. You can maybe use it as an engine in Blue Eyes, but I would highly not recommend it because this deck is bricky enough, and I wouldn't be mixing more bricky cards with this. I just don't think that this card is really appropriate. Next is Malefic Blue Eyes White Dragon. This card is actually, honestly, probably like a tech choice. This is a decent card. So basically what this card does is you can banish a Blue Eyes White Dragon, as long as you control a field. Well, you can banish a Blue Eyes to summon this card from the deck for free. So it has Blue Eyes in the name, so you can search it a million different ways. So it's easy to search and it's easy to summon. But basically what this card does is it has to be special summoned by banishing a Blue Eyes White Dragon from your deck. That's not the end of the world, because you have a variety of different new cards like this and this that can get back banished Blue Eyes White Dragon. So it's not the end of the world. But you banish a Blue Eyes, and then you can special summon this card from your hand. You banish the Blue Eyes from your deck. That is actually not that bad. And all you need to do is control a field spell on the field in order to keep this card on the field. If you don't have a field spell, this card destroys itself automatically. Now, it used to be like, oh, I don't have a field spell, what am I going to do? But now you have Mausoleum. You have a free way to search Mausoleum. So Mausoleum's always going to be on the field. If it's not Mausoleum, it's some other field spell. So you always have a field spell on your field at all times. So this card is actually just a free extender. This is basically Alternative-Eyes. It's in certain ways, this card, funny enough, is actually now better than Alternative for the new version of the deck. Because the thing with Alternative is, with Alternative, you have to reveal a Blue Eyes to summon Alternative. It's not a outrageously difficult summoning condition to meet, but with the new cards, you don't want to have Blue Eyes in your hand. This doesn't require you to have Blue Eyes in your hand. It requires you to have a Blue Eyes in your deck that you can banish, which is perfectly fine. You always have a Blue Eyes in your deck. You're playing Blue Eyes. So this card, in a certain sense, actually, in a lot of different ways, is actually better than Alternative in the modern version of the deck. But I don't have the heart to put it over Alternative in this. I just don't have the heart. It is actually a pretty decent card now with the new support, but putting it over Alternative, I think, might be a little bit of a stretch. Next is Blue Eyes Abyss Dragon. This card has a variety of different decent effects. I think this is a tech choice. This is another card that can be a little bit bricky if you open. Basically, all of the Blue Eyes monsters are all bricks if you open them in your hand, except for Malefic and Alternative. Those are the only two that you actually want to see in your hand. Jet, occasionally you want to see, but the rest you never want to open whatsoever. This is no exception. So this is, like I said, this is Blue Eyes Abyss Dragon. Basically, its effects are, if this card is special summoned, you can add a ritual or a polymerization from your deck to your hand. So that effect is decent, but again, this is one of those things where it lets you add polymerization, but you don't use polymerization in Blue Eyes. Like, you just don't. You don't use polymerization. We have Ultimate Fusion. If it said add a fusion card, we could be like, oh, it's pretty decent. But no, this adds polymerization. But why would I want to play polymerization in Blue Eyes? Like, I don't want to have to fuse all of these monsters from my hand and feel like I don't want to give up all those cards. The whole point is use Ultimate Fusion. Like, why would you? So it searches a card you don't need. The other effect is that it searches the ritual, which a ritual spell, it can search any ritual spell. That is actually not terrible because it can search Chaos Form or Advanced Ritual Art or Urgent Ritual Art, or like any, not Urgent Ritual, it search the other new Advanced Ritual Art, but it can search any one of those cards. So that is actually not terrible. It can search any one of those. And then also during the end phase, it can add a level 8 or higher dragon monster from your deck to your hand, which again is not a terrible effect because it can search every Blue Eyes card, but it can also search any high level, like it can search any Chaos Dragon, for example, like Levianeer or the Chaos Emperor Dragon, or it can search Deep Eyes. It can search any one of those cards, and that's actually not terrible. It can search Chaos. It could search the Chaos Max. So at the end phase, for example, you summon this at the end phase off of a stone, off of the Stone of Ancients, you can actually search Chaos Max plus Chaos Form. But the thing is, it's a little bit slow. The other thing is you can banish this from the graveyard, and then all level 8 or higher dragon monsters you control gain 1000 attack, and that attack gain is permanent, and also it's 1000 attack. So even if you have like 4 monsters, that's like a 4000 attack spread. Sometimes that's the difference between winning and losing. Even if you have 2 monsters, right? You have 2 3000 attack monsters. You activate this. They went from 3000 each to 4,000 each, and now it's 8,000 damage exactly. So that can actually matter. Now, my big problem with this card is that is extremely slow. One of the effects is on the end phase. The other one is on summon. Most of the time, you'll be summoning this card during the end phase off of a stone. So this card is extremely slow. You don't actually get to use the benefits of this card until the following turn. And again, this is kind of like the older version of this deck. It is way too slow. You summon it off a stone, and then the following turn, if you survive, you get to summon a Chaos Max, banish this, make Chaos Max 5000, and then attack. Like, that is just, it's just too slow to play. I think it's definitely a tech choice. You can splash one in here and there, but I don't think this is a card that you should definitely be playing. Next is Spirit Dragon. This is Spirit. I forget the exact name. It's Spirit. Dragon Spirit of White. So Dragon Spirit of White is always a Blue Eyes card. That's not bad. I think this is another like tech choice. It used to be a card that you like had to play, but now you definitely don't have to play this. Basically, it's basically on summon. It can banish a spawn trap card. That used to be a lot better back in the day, but banishing one spawn trap card is just not important. Also, this card has always been a brick. It has always been a brick. It has another effect where you contribute it and then special summon a Blue Eyes White Dragon from your hand. Again, you don't want Blue Eyes in your hand whatsoever. So all these effects that work with Blue Eyes being in your hand is just, you don't want Blue Eyes in your hand at any given time with the new stuff. You want Blue Eyes in your graveyard, you want Blue Eyes banished, you want Blue Eyes in your deck. You do not want Blue Eyes in your hand any longer. I know it may be a little bit hard to hear this, but you just do not want Blue Eyes in your hand. This card basically is very much power crept. Banishing one spell trap card isn't good enough. I almost want to put it, actually I will put it into bag tech choice. I can't even imagine side decking this card anymore. That's how sad this is. The only way to summon this anymore is off of either Stone of Ancients or off of this Sage, for example. Sage, maybe Protector. Like, those are the only ways to really even summon this card anymore. It's just been very power crept. Again, nothing like against the card. This used to be in older tier lists. I probably put this in B tier or maybe even A tier. It used to be one of the better removal cards against spell trap cards, but it's been so power crept, but I don't think that it's really worth playing anymore. Next is Blue Eyes Solid Dragon. Blue Eyes Solid Dragon, I kind of want to, I'm going to put him in F. I don't know if he deserves to be an F, but I'm going to put him in F because this card has never been good. Like, literally, it was supposed to be that a wave of support that was supposed to save Blue Eyes. It was an ultra rare. It was expensive. This card has never been good. It legitimately has never been good. It has a variety of different effects. If this card is normal or special summoned, you could target a face-up monster your opponent controls and negate its effects. That's effect number one. So the problem with this is it targets and it summons and then it negates. So it's not like, you know, while this card's on the field, if your opponent activates a monster effect, then you negate it. It basically targets and negates, which is a really slow way to interact with your opponent. Because, like, let's say you, like, in what circumstance is this card useful? In what circumstance? Like, you use Monster Reborn, bring this back, target a card your opponent controls, negate it. Like, if your opponent summons an Aluber and they activate the effect to search for a branded fusion, how do you stop it with this card? You don't. You don't. You have to target it and then your opponent gets a response. Like, it's such a poor card overall. I've never found it to be useful, ever. From day one, I found this card to be totally and completely useless. It's like you can resolve it, but for the most part, it's just simply not a good enough card. Also, its stats suck. It has 2,500 attack, 2,000 defense. I don't know why those are the stats on this card. Usually, if you're going to make the attack 2,500, they usually inverse it and make like the defense 3,000 or something. But they made the attack 2,500, so you can't even search it with, like, Melody of Awakening Dragons. Like, they just made the stats on this card so unusable with the card. Also, you don't even want to see it in your hand. Like, what is the ideal way to even use this card? It's never been useful. Its level sucks. Its attack power sucks. The only effect on it that's decent is when your opponent activates a card or effect, you can shuffle this card back into the deck and then special summon out a Blue Eyes White Dragon from your deck. So you can, I guess, if your opponent like tries to imperm this, you can switch it out for a Blue Eyes and then dodge the imperm. That's the only card on the effect. That's the only card, the only effect on that card that is even remotely decent. Everything else is just terrible. It actually is kind of like a terrible card. I have really no understanding of why they printed this and why they made it an ultra rare when they printed it, because this card is unbelievably underwhelming. Next is Chronicle Magician. Basically, this is a level 7 dark spellcaster that you can summon fairly easily. Basically, what it does is if a monster with 2,500 defense or attack is summoned to your field, you can special summon this card from your hand. And, I mean, it's okay. It's basically like a free summon. It's level 7. And then if you have a Blue Eyes or a Dark Magician on your field, you can target it, and then that monster gains 2,500 attack. Honestly, this is like bad tech choice, maybe horrible. I almost want to put it in horrible because I don't have enough cards in there. This card's just not very good. Okay, like, let's say you use this. You summon a level 7 spellcaster onto your Blue Eyes board. Now what? Like, what do I do now? Okay, I summoned a Blue Eyes. I summoned this. Where do we go from here? You can use maybe you can use one of the level 1 tuners plus this to make a level 8 synchro monster. Maybe. And then what? You know, it's like, what do you make? Like the Stardust Excel Synchron? Like, you make that guy? Or what are you making exactly? And how does that benefit you in the long run? You're making that? Okay, like maybe you're making a... There's just better cards. There honestly are. Like, literally, Malefic is a better card than this. It just really serves very, very little purpose. I think it's horrible. I don't think it's a very good card at all. Next is Neo Kaiser Seahorse. When this card was first announced and I read it, I'll be honest, I'm going to be completely transparent with you. I thought this card was like very underwhelming, but I've been playtesting with it and I've been making a ton of combos with it. I honestly think this is like an S tier card. This is another one of just, it's a one card starter in the archetype. It's very, very important to the deck. It basically has a variety of different effects. If you control a Blue Eyes White Dragon, you can summon this for free. That comes up sometimes. Sometimes it doesn't come up, but it's a free special summon if you control a Blue Eyes. It has another effect where you can target a level 1. You can target a light tuner and then either increase or decrease its level. Again, this comes up sometimes. Increasing, decreasing its level can actually come up and help you occasionally. But overall, I think it's just kind of an okay effect. You can take like a stone, for example, and turn it into a level 2. And then you can take a Blue Eyes and the stone and turn it into like a Bestial Disbatter. Or if you're playing on Master Duel still, you can summon like a Baron de Fleur, for example. So it can definitely be useful in certain situations, but it's not like the most outrageously useful card. And then it has another effect where if this card's sent from the field to the graveyard, you can send a Blue Eyes or monster that mentions Blue Eyes White Dragon from your deck to the graveyard, and that effect is actually what is the most important effect on this card, because this card, despite being a Kaiser Seahorse, is not a sea serpent monster. It's actually a dragon, which means that it actually works with the Spirit Link 1 monster, because you can use the Spirit Link 1 monster, link this away, and then instantly send a Blue Eyes to the graveyard, or you can send a Maiden to the graveyard, and both of those can kind of trigger a variety of different effects for you. So that is very, very important. It's probably, yeah, it's easily one of the better 1-card starters in the entire deck. This card alone builds like, you know, a 6-7 negate board. Just this card, nothing else. Just summon this card, 6 negate board. Definitely one of the better cards that they released. It's crazy once you actually start to playtest how much better certain cards become and how much worse certain cards become. Next is Lady of D. I've kind of included all of the Lord of D cards in here too, just because Konami has, it's not me, I didn't decide this. Konami has decided to make Blue Eye support and Lord of D support just kind of, they kind of combine the two different archetypes together. It used to be, Lord of D used to just support dragons. He was the Lord of the Dragons, and now he's like he's just Blue Eyes White Dragons, like boy, and they just like help each other. But yeah, Lady of D is, I guess, Lord of D's girlfriend. She's not very good. She's, I'd say, horrible. She's not great. It basically makes your opponent unable to target face-up dragon monsters you control for attacks. Your monsters are 3,000 plus attack. Please attack me. Please. I would love to see it. I mean, like, in what case does that even come up? Like, Yubel? Maybe? Like, okay, you're playing against Yubel. Don't attack my Blue Eyes. Like, okay, maybe that. Maybe Mekanko. But in most cases, it's like, please attack my Blue Eyes. I would love for you to attack my Blue Eyes. Then it has another effect where if this card on the field would be destroyed by a battle or card effect, you could send a dragon you control to the graveyard, from your hand to the graveyard, and then you basically protect it. And this card doesn't get destroyed. Again, that's just like, this card overall is kind of like terrible. I wouldn't use it. Honestly, the Chronicle Sorcerer is better. Even Solid Dragon, who I personally don't like, is probably better. But yeah, it's a horrible card. All right, next is Chronicle Sorceress. So Chronicle Sorceress is actually an interesting card because it almost does what the Neo Kaiser Dragon, the Neo Kaiser Seahorse does. It almost does what almost the same thing, but it requires you to have a card in your graveyard already. So basically what it requires is for you to have either a light or a dark card in the graveyard, and then based on that you can send different things. But if that effect wasn't on there, this card would probably be a 1-card starter for the entire archetype, just like Neo Kaiser Seahorse. It actually would. It would be a 1-card starter. But unfortunately, you already have to have a card in the graveyard in order to make it usable. Now, if you're running a ton of Effect Veilers, that could actually possibly, that could work potentially. But basically, if you have a light in your graveyard, you can send a Blue Eyes or a card that mentions it from your deck to the graveyard. So essentially, it fulfills the same conditions that Neo Kaiser does, because that also sends a card to the graveyard. And you can use this card for link material because it's a level 4 for a copy of the Link 1, which is the Spirit. Now, the problem with this card is it's OCG exclusive. I don't think it's even a Master Duel. It's not in the TCG. I don't know if it's a Master Duel, but I know it's not in the TCG, so it's OCG exclusive right now. So you couldn't run it even if you wanted to, but even if you did run it, it's not as good as the Neo Kaiser Seahorse. It has a fraction of what the Neo Kaiser Seahorse does, and it's not even a tuner, and it's just missing a bunch of other components. So I'd say it's probably like a bad tech choice. If that one little thing, if it just allowed you to just send a Blue Eyes or a card that mentions it to the graveyard, this card would legitimately be another 1-card starter among the many that are available in this deck. But it's right now it's probably like a D bad tech choice. All right, next is King of D. This card is a little difficult to rate without seeing what the cards that it searches do, but here's what this card basically does. So when this card is normal summon, it has to be normal summon, you can discard a Spell Trap. Again, has to be Spell Trap, can't be a monster, must be Spell Trap. It's one of the big drawbacks to this card. You can add a Flute of Summoning Dragon, Melody of Awakening Dragon, or a Dragon Revival Rhapsody from your deck to the hand. That is not terrible because all of those cards are usable to a different degree. The terrible part about this card is that it requires you to discard a spell trap card. That is so annoying because you don't want to discard the spell and trap cards in this deck. Some of them do have graveyard effects, but generally speaking, you don't want to discard them. The graveyard effects and almost all of these cards are usually an afterthought. They're not like your main thing. And unfortunately, that is really terrible. The fact that you have to discard spell and trap cards, you want to discard monsters. You want to discard blue eyes. You want to discard stones. You want to discard you want to discard monsters. You do not want to discard spells and trap cards in this archetype. Because generally speaking, they're either extenders or they're just cards that you really need to hold on to. You're not trying to discard those. And then the cards that you search are... Flute of Summoning Dragon is underwhelming, I'll be honest. That's the one that Kaiba used to use back in the day. Melody is good, but a little power crept. And then, of course, we've got Dragon Revival Rhapsody, which is, again, it's okay. We'll get to it, but this card is only as good as what it searches, but its search power isn't too great. I'd say it's probably like a D bad tech choice, probably somewhere around here. I wouldn't recommend playing it. I don't see most people playing it, but I wouldn't. Like, if you snuck one into your deck, I wouldn't be like, wow, that does not belong there. But it's just an okay card. Next is Dictator of D. This card is actually kind of good, but it's another one that's been power crap. So when this card came out, I kind of went off on it because I was very frustrated that they put this card on a Lord of D monster. I wish that they put this card, I wish they took the text from this card, copied it, and put it on any level 1 tuner whatsoever. Just level 1 tuner. I don't care if it's a dragon. I don't care if it's a spellcaster. I wish they copied and pasted this exact effect onto a level 1 tuner. It would have been so much better. So overall, this card, honestly, isn't that terrible. I guess it can do similar things to the Neo Kaiser Seahorse. It's kind of similar to that, where it's not a full 1-card combo, but it can definitely get you a lot done. The problem with this is the stats and the typing. It's a dark spellcaster, level 4 monster. It's a non-tuner. So all of those kind of have negative aspects to it, but its effects are okay. Basically, if you control a blue eyes, your opponent can't attack anything. Well, you can choose the attacks where your opponent's attacks go if you control a blue eyes. So let's say you have a blue eyes white dragon in attack mode. You have this guy in attack mode. Your opponent summons like a Gemini elf, like a monster with 1900 attack. They attack your Dictator of D. You can redirect the attack over to a blue eyes. That's not terrible. The other thing that this card can do is you can send a blue eyes from your deck to the graveyard and then special summon this card. That's really good. You Foolish Burial before you even summon. That's really good. Also, you can discard a card that mentions blue eyes white dragon to special summon a blue eyes monster from your graveyard. Again, that is not bad. So specifically because you fulfilled the requirements with the first effect, because you put the blue eyes into the graveyard. So now you've got one. Now you discard a card and you summon a blue eyes. So I think this is probably in the tech choice category. I think at best in the modern build of the deck, this is probably a 1 of. At best, maybe a at best it's a 1 of. Most people have just completely cut it. I've cut it personally out of the main version of the deck. Maybe I'll include it back as a 1 of, but generally speaking, there are just many cards that do so much better than this. I don't think it's worth playing anymore. Again, this is kind of sad because on the last tier list, this was probably A tier. It might have even been S tier. It definitely wasn't C tier, and here we are. Like I said, a lot of cards have moved up and a lot of cards have moved down, and we got to keep going through it. Next is Lord of D. This card is probably horrible, just like Lady of D. They both suck. Him and his girlfriend are both terrible. Basically what this does is neither player can target dragons on the field of card effects. You don't have a reliable way of really summoning this onto the field. I wish this targeting protection was on Dictator of D instead, because I think it would have been much, much cooler to have this protection. Now, his artwork looks phenomenal. He's still one of my favorite looking cards of all time, but unfortunately, he's just kind of a part of the old Blue Eyes cards and really not good enough anymore to be played. Next is Kaiba Man. This is another card I think is just horrible. It's cool because Kaiba is on a Yu-Gi-Oh card. I think that's cool, and I think it's cool that Jaden dueled him in the show. I think all that's great. Basically, what this card does is you contribute it and then special summon a Blue Eyes from your hand. It's just like Red Eyes Black Chick, You basically tribute this, summon Blue Eyes. Okay, nice. Except for the fact that this card is a level 3, doesn't work with the deck. It's a light, that somewhat works with the deck. It's a warrior, doesn't work with the deck. You can't like link it away for the spirit. You can't search this card. It's not a tuner. It's so out of archetype. Other than the cool artwork, this card actually just completely sucks. It's a part of the really, really, really old support for Blue Eyes, and unfortunately it's just not good enough. Now what is funny is that a lot of these older cards that suck have great artwork. So at the very least, the card sucks. But listen, I have this. Listen, I have this card. I love all the Blue Eyes cards. I have this card somewhere in a binder from Dark Revelations. I think it's a great looking card, but it isn't good, and we have to live with that. Same thing with Shining Dragon. Same thing with Lord of D. All right, next is Protector. And one thing I will say, all of these light tuners have to be looked at all over again, because now that the Mausoleum of White is a completely easy to search card, it is basically, you're almost guaranteed to start with it now because it's searchable off of Link 1. It's kind of like the Salamangreat Sanctuary. That card made so many other things more easy, like it made the strategy so much easier to do once they came out with their Link 1. This is the same situation. All of these are now 100% better than what they used to be. I put some of these in F tier last time. I don't think any of these are going to be going in F tier. Maybe Storm Rider. But like none of these are probably going to be going into F tier anymore, because all of them are now somewhat usable, because you get double normal summons and you can easily target them and then trigger their effects. So let's start off with Protector. I think Protector's okay. I think he's a C tier. I think he has potential to move up, honestly. I've been playtesting, like I said. He's probably one of the ones that I haven't playtested with too much. I've been playtesting more with like Sage and Master and like stuff like that. But I think that this card can actually be decent. Basically, its effect is this. On normal summon, it can summon a level 1 tuner from your hand. That effect is not once per turn. That's what's awesome about it. You can, there's a million ways to search level 1 tuners between Sage and the new Wishes card. There's a lot of ways to get to level 1 tuners now, so you can have a lot more of them in your hand, and that effect actually isn't bad, because you can add back things like Sage pretty easily. Honestly, with this deck, you can add back Sage just by doing your regular combo. You can add back Sage, because you can add back Sage with Master, and then you can summon the Sage off of this, which again is pretty decent. So you can summon a level 1 tuner. Also, level 1 tuner means a lot of different cards. It means the stones, and it also means Effect Veiler. So you can combo off with the Effect Veiler if you don't think that you need it. So that is actually quite important. And then this has another effect where you can target an effect monster you control, send it to the graveyard, and if you do, special summon a Blue Eyes monster from your hand. So all of the different light tuners, the actual like human beings that are Blue Eyes cards, they all have different effects that work with different parts of your deck. So this works with graveyard, this works with deck, this works with this just does a bunch of variety. It works with your graveyard, and then this guy works with your hand. It's actually a really cool design once you think about it. But yes, this guy works with your hand. You can summon from your hand 2 different ways. You can summon Blue Eyes from your hand, or you can summon tuners from your hand. Overall, like I said, as a tech choice, I think slipping one of this guy in is actually not bad, because if you summon this and activate its effect, sometimes you'll bait an Effect Veiler or an Imperm, and then you waste the Effect Veiler, the Imperm on him, and then you can just go into the Spirit and go full combo, and you don't have to worry about it. It's actually quite decent. Next is Stone of Ancients. This is definitely like a tech choice now. It's definitely not a card that is a 3 of anymore. Maybe in the control build it's still a 3 of, but even that I doubt that it's going to be a 3 of anymore. This card, the problem with it, it's just power creep. It's slow. You don't get to summon the Blue Eyes until the end phase, and by then the new Blue Eyes deck can build a full board. You do not want to summon this during the end phase. So basically what this card does, if it's sent to the graveyard during the end phase, you can summon a monster, a Blue Eyes monster from your deck. It's cool because it triggers a lot. It triggers Abyss. You can summon regular Blue Eyes. You can put Jet into play. But again, your board is usually pretty full of monsters, so you don't really need to... I mean, other than Jet, there's really not a card that you really want to summon. Maybe Jet because it protects your board, but other than that, you really don't want to summon anything. Also, its graveyard effect is pretty decent. You can banish it and then get a Blue Eyes from your graveyard back to your hand. Again, if you're playing alternative, that's all great, but now that alternative is not even being played, this card is probably not going to be getting played. So I think this card is probably like a C tech choice. Next is Rider of the Stormwinds, which is actually, if you don't know, this is actually Sage sitting on top of it. It's actually Sage. I think this card actually came out before Sage officially came out as a Yu-Gi-Oh card. So this card is Sage riding a Blue-Eyes White Dragon. Basically what it does, it lets you target a dragon monster, and then it gives that normal dragon piercing, and if that normal monster dragon would be destroyed, you could destroy this instead. Honestly, the card's like okay, it's like weirdly decent, but it's not something I would probably play. It's one of the only level 1 tuners that I would not want to play. It really isn't that great of a card. It basically gives you piercing or protection. Okay, nice. And it only works with Blue Eyes. It doesn't work with all of the other Blue Eyes cards. It works with specifically Blue Eyes White Dragon, the OG. It doesn't work with all of the other different cards, so I wouldn't recommend playing this for now. Next is Master. Master's a phenomenal card, actually. Master basically allows you to, on normal summon, add a light tuner from your graveyard to your hand. Also, it has another effect where if it's in the graveyard, you can target a monster you control, an effect monster, send it to the graveyard, and then special summon a Blue Eyes from your graveyard. This card is actually really good. It's an amazing extender in the new deck. I'd say it's probably in mostly played. Every single build I've seen of the new deck, for the most part, plays at least one copy of this. I've been playing one. It helps you extend on your turn 1 board significantly. I think mostly played is probably like a fair place to put it. Next is another kind of like legacy Blue Eyes card. It is a White Stone of Legend. This is a card that was very important for many, many years. This card has literally been meta relevant since it came out, and that's saying a lot. It really has. It has been meta relevant since it came out years and years ago. If you look, this card has been, it was meta relevant in Edison. It was meta relevant in like hat format. It was meta relevant for years. It was meta relevant with the Dragon Lords. Like, this card has been meta relevant. Exodia. Like, this card has been so meta relevant for so many years. Basically what this card does is when this card's sent to the graveyard, you can add a Blue Eyes Red Dragon from your deck to your hand. That effect is mandatory. It never misses timing, and it's just a phenomenal effect. You get a free Blue Eyes every time this goes to the graveyard, and you basically get to recur a lot of your resources. So if you're using like a card of consonants, you activate it, discard this, draw 2 cards, activate this, and then get a Blue Eye. So you use 2 cards to get to 3 cards, and now you potentially drew trade in and do all of this other stuff. So this card's always been pretty good. It's also pretty good with alternative, because you can like link this away, get a Blue Eyes to hand, and then summon an alternative. So that's always been pretty good. It's also good with dangers. I'd say it's probably like a C tier tech choice nowadays, because again, you don't want regular Blue Eyes in your hand in a Blue Eyes deck. So it probably isn't a C tech choice situation, but it's decent in certain decks like Exodia. Like, it's still to this day, it's still played in those like FTK Exodia decks. It's not a bad card, but I'd say it's probably like a C tier tech choice kind of a card. Next is Maiden with Eyes of Blue. Actually, no, it's Maiden of White. It's the new Maiden. It's not the old Maiden. This is easily an S tier card. It's one of the best cards. Has 3 amazing effects. You can send this card from your hand or field to the graveyard to place a True Light from your deck directly in your spawn trap card zone. That is insane, because by placing it, you can use it instantly. You can use it to summon a Blue Eyes immediately. You can use it to set a Blue Eyes spawn trap card immediately. It's really good. It interacts with a trap card very well. Next, it has another effect where if you special summon a Blue Eyes, you can special summon this card back from your graveyard free of charge. That's really good. And then has another effect when this card is targeted, or when an effect is activated that targets this card, you can special summon a Blue Eyes or a tuner from your graveyard to the field, which is also really, really good, because you can summon a level 1 light tuner or a Blue Eyes. So it's like Maiden, but better in every single imaginable way. Like, it literally is better in every imaginable way. You can trigger it with the field spell, which is cool. It's better, you can trigger it with the field spell by targeting it. It sets True Light, and it special summons itself back. Every single part about this card is better than Maiden in every single imaginable way. It's definitely an S tier card. Next is Sage. Sage is another one. This card is a 1-card starter. It is a 1-card full combo. It's on par with the Maiden. It's very, very good. On summon, it basically searches a level 1 light tuner, which means that it can search the Maiden. The Maiden can place True Light, and then you have full combo. It also has a second effect where you can send an effect monster to the graveyard, target, send an effect monster you control to the graveyard, and special summon a Blue Eyes from your deck. So this is one of the only ways left for you to summon things like Jet. You can summon things like Abyss. You can summon things like, if you wanted to, Solid Dragon or Spirit of White. This is one of the only consistent ways left to summon some of these cards, because we've cut so many different things like the like the stone and stuff like that. So if you were going to play these, you have to play Sage. It's a very, very good card. It's also a 1-card full combo. So very strong card. Okay, next is Priestess. Priestess is an underwhelming card overall. I've resolved this card a few times. Like I said, it maybe deserves a second look ever since the new stuff came out, because it can work better with some of the level 1 light tuners. But I think it's probably like a bad tech choice. Maybe a C tech choice, but I think it's like a bad tech choice. It's just worse than all of the other level 1 light tuners other than Rider of Stormwinds. But it has an effect where when a card or effect is activated that targets this card, which is not difficult to do because you have the Mausoleum that can target this, you have Master that can target this. There's a few different ways to target this. You can send an effect monster you control to the graveyard, which is usually, you can usually send itself to the graveyard. You can target an effect monster you control, send it to the graveyard, and you could add 2 Blue-Eyes monsters with different names from your deck to your hand. Again, this is a part of like the older aspect of the deck where you used to be able to add a Blue-Eyes and an alternative to your hand. It's like, okay, nice, you can summon an alternative, but now what? It's like, okay, you summon an alternative by sacrificing pretty much this card on the field. It has a second effect where if this card's in your graveyard, you can target a Blue-Eyes monster you control, shuffle that Blue-Eyes monster back into the deck, which you don't want to do. Why would you want to get it into the graveyard? You don't want to shuffle it back into the deck. Shuffle it back into the deck, and if you do, special summon this card from your graveyard, which is the Priestess. Now, the other issue is that you can only use each of these effects once per turn. All of these other level 1 light tuners, you can use both their effects you can use both of their respective effects the turn that you activate. Like immediately you can activate, like for example, Master can add back and then it can use its graveyard effect to special summon. This can add back and then summon from hand. This can add back and then summon from deck. This can use all 3 of its pretty broken effects all in one turn. This card can only use one of those 2 mediocre overall. This card's effects are overall fairly mediocre, and it can only use one of them per turn, which honestly is a little bit terrible. But maybe it's possible that they could be used in the future. If I do more playtesting, I might figure out a combo with it. But overall, I think this card just eats too many resources to be good enough. Next is Regular Maiden. I think Regular Maiden is probably like a C tech choice. It's easy to get its effects off, like very easy these days, because you could just use the field spell, like I said, or Sage, or one of those effects. But its effects are decent. If it's targeted for an attack, you can change it to defense and then special summon a Blue-Eyes from your deck. And then its other effect is if it's targeted by card effect, you can special summon, again, if this targeted by card effect, you can special summon a Blue-Eyes Red Dragon from your deck. So either way, if your opponent targets it with card effect or battle, or if you target it with card effect, regardless, it's still going to special summon a Blue-Eyes onto the field. It's kind of okay. Like I said, it works okay with the field spell. It works okay with Sage. It works okay with some of these different Master and Graveyard. Like, it works okay with some of these effects. But overall, I think the card is just underwhelming, and I think that the new Maiden of White is just in almost every single way better. It's even the same name. Honestly, it's even the same girl. It is the same girl in a different angle, but she looks like she's giving Blue-Eyes White Dragon a hug, and this one looks like it's not giving Blue-Eyes White Dragon a hug. It's almost the exact same card. It's just simply been power corrupt. I guess you can maybe still play one copy, but I wouldn't even recommend doing that. Next is Chaos Max Dragon. This card is easy to summon, and they keep pushing new ways to summon it, so you can now summon it off this trap card, for example. You can also summon it off of the variety of different, different ways to summon it. I would say this, I think it's a tech choice. The problem with Chaos Max is it has been overall fairly power corrupt. When it came out, a monster that couldn't be destroyed or targeted by card effects was like a big deal. It was like, damn, how do I out this? Like, do I summon something really big? Do I play honest? Do I have to use like Cosmojo to banish it non-target? Like, how do I out Chaos Max Dragon? It used to be difficult to banish, to get rid of a Chaos Max Dragon. Now, every single deck has non-targeting removal. As a matter of fact, like, every single deck has non-targeting removal that is like accessible almost in the main deck. Like, it's so easy. Also, you can just make an access code talker who's 300 attack points, not 300, but he's 2300 attack, and then he's going to gain between 2 to 3000 attack. Almost always it's going to be stronger than a Chaos Max Dragon. Chaos Max Dragon overall is just kind of underwhelming now. That's his issue. He isn't difficult to summon. He can catch people off guard occasionally, but generally it's just kind of an underwhelming card. Unless you're in a really slow down game state, he's actually kind of an easy card to get rid of. I'd say the only thing about Chaos Max that is still decent is the fact that it does double piercing and it's 4,000 attack. So if you attack a 0 defense monster, you can kind of like wipe out games sometimes, and I think that is decent. I mean, the card overall is just, I'd say it's just kind of okay. It can catch people off guard, but I wouldn't recommend it. You can build an entire deck around it, but again, I think the new version of this deck, which is using all of the synchro monsters, is probably 100% better than actually using Chaos Max and trying to OTK and like giving them an IB or like giving them an incantation and then with Xian Spy, or like giving them, you know, creature swapping. I just think that stuff's so gimmicky. It can win games, it can catch people off guard, but overall I don't think it's the best way to play the deck. Next is Blue-Eyes Chaos Dragon. This card is probably like a D bad tech choice. I mean, it's kind of like, I probably see tech choice. If you're building a pure Chaos Max Dragon deck, I can see you playing this. But if you're just playing it in, yeah, if you're trying to play it in regular Blue-Eyes, I wouldn't recommend this. It essentially has the same effects as Chaos Max Dragon, where it can be destroyed by card effects, can be destroyed by battle. If you use Blue-Eyes White Dragon as material to summon this, like as ritual material, you can, when it declares an attack, it changes all monsters your opponent controls to defense, and then it changes their defense to 0. So, and also this card does piercing. So it can do 3,000 damage fairly easily. You also, if you have Chaos Max Dragon and this, and you summon both of them and you attack with this, change their monsters to defense, and then attack with this, it's guaranteed game. But that's a lot of cards that you actually need to summon, and you're going second, and they're still maintaining their board. That's a lot to do. That really is. It's a lot to actually accomplish in a very small span of time. Is that, yeah, it is. I mean, it actually is a ton to accomplish. You have to summon both of these, which are 2 ritual monsters, while your opponent has a full board, and you somehow are able to summon through all of that, and then OTK. I think in just modern Yu-Gi-Oh, it's very tough to do. I actually think this is like a bad tech choice. If you're going to play Chaos Max, probably if you're playing a pure Chaos Max deck, just play it the regular way and give them your monster through like creature swap or something like that. But I don't think it's, or like give them an IB. Yeah, give them like the IB monster and then attack over that. I don't think this is really worth playing in the modern Blue-Eyes deck. Next is Paladin of White. This card is extremely underwhelming. It's probably an F tier. It's a ritual that requires level 4 monsters, but I think it's not great because your deck doesn't really play level 4s, exception of the Neo Kaiser Seahorse. It doesn't really play level 4s, but it's a level 4 ritual, and you can, when it battles a defense position monster, you can destroy that monster automatically. If it attacks a defense position face down monster, it destroys it automatically. That effect wasn't actually terrible back when this card came out, so you got to give this card some grace because it came out in 2004 in Magician's Force, so destroying a defense position monster was like, oh, this is such a big deal. Obviously now this just sucks. No one sets monsters. The other effect that it has is you can tribute this card and special summon a Blue-Eyes from your hand or from your deck, essentially for free, but the Blue-Eyes can't attack, so that again is pretty underwhelming. Generally what you wanted to do back in the day is summon this card, attack their defense position monster, and then main phase 2 tag this out into a Blue-Eyes. But at that point, for what? Yeah, for what? You get a Blue-Eyes and you have to sink all these resources into it. It was just very, very underwhelming. All right, next up is Wishes for Eyes of Blue. This card is very good. This card is probably another 1 card. Well, I guess technically it's not a 1 card because you need a discard, but it's essentially a 1 card starter. This is Wishes for Eyes of Blue. It has amazing effects on it. You discard a card and you add a light tuner, a light level 1 tuner, which is Maiden or Sage or any of these light level 1 tuners. And on top of that, you have to keep in mind a light level 1 tuner also includes Effect Veiler. So if you already have your extenders and your combo starters in hand, you just search Effect Veiler and then you have an additional interruption on your opponent's turn. It's actually kind of sick. So you can search a free Effect Veiler. On top of that, this card allows you to also not only search a light level 1 tuner, but it also lets you search a spell trap card that lists Blue-Eyes in its text, which is a ton of cards that we'll get to later on. But They have a variety of uses that are all fairly good. Also, this card you can set for free off of the copy of True Light. Off of a copy of True Light. So with True Light you get to this, and then off of this you can get to Ultimate Fusion or Bingo Machine, or you can get to any of the Blue Eyes cards, really, Rage or Ultimate Creature of Destruction. Any card that mentions Blue Eyes White Dragon in its text, you can search free of charge. Also has another effect where you can banish this card from the graveyard, and then you can equip a Blue Eyes White Dragon you control with a monster from your a Blue Eyes monster from your extra deck. And then you gain 400 attack. So that's what it can do, and that can set up for Tyrant Dragon. It can set up for you to be able to summon Magia. It can set up for a Neo Blue Eyes White Dragon, so you can get later protection. It does a lot. It can do all of those things just off of just that, and that's just a graveyard effect of this card that you can use both in the same turn. So this card is very, very, very strong. All right, next is Roar of the Blue-Eyed Dragons. This card is probably, I'd say, it's between B and A. It's very good. It's like good, but not like outrageously good. It's probably an A tier. It's a one of that you almost always play in the deck. I wouldn't say it's mostly played. I think it's pretty much always played. It lets you special summon a Blue Eyes from your graveyard, deck, or banished. Or banished is important because if they call by the grave, they can, and it doesn't target too, which is also kind of cool. So if you activate this effect and your opponent's like, oh, I'm smart, I'm going to call by. You can actually summon the Blue Eyes. You can summon the Blue Eyes monster that they call by the grave, which is kind of crazy. Also, it can summon any Blue Eyes monster, so it doesn't have to be a Blue Eyes White Dragon. Now, you can do this if you control... You can only summon a monster that you don't already control, so you have to keep that in mind. Also, this card locks you into dragons from your extra deck for the rest of the turn. Not from your main deck, from your extra deck. So you have to keep that in mind also. So if you're going to do this... This should be after you've already summoned maybe something else, or maybe you don't have anything other than dragons in your extra deck, which you probably don't because you're playing Blue Eyes. But basically, yeah, you're locked into dragons for the rest of the turn. You have to keep that in mind. Also, all of that isn't really that big of a deal. Also has another effect where you can banish this card from the graveyard, and then you can fusion summon from your extra deck using monsters from your hand and field, including a Blue Eyes monster. So that is also pretty cool because you can cheat fusion summoning just by banishing this card out of the graveyard. And as far as what you can summon, it's really up to you. I don't really know what you would be able to summon. I guess you can even make weird things like a Mud Dragon, but it can't be that turn. So you can make things like Mud Dragon, you can make things like Garura, for example, but I would highly recommend, you have to wait like for the following turn. You can't do it immediately because you're locked into dragons, but you can potentially summon things that aren't even Blue Eyes monsters, which is kind of cool. So it gives you access to all of these, but it also gives you access to non-Blue Eyes cards if you wanted to. So I think overall it's a very, very good card. The only thing that is like not great on it is the dragon lock, because then it kind of maybe prevents you from having a full repertoire of different things that you can do. But other than that, it's a very strong card. Next is Burst Stream. I think Burst Stream is a tech choice. I've seen most builds run it just because it's a free card that you can search off of the graveyard effect of the Mausoleum. So basically with Mausoleum, if it's in the graveyard, you can banish it and search Burst Stream of Destruction for free. Burst Stream of Destruction basically is Raigeki if you control Blue Eyes, but it's searchable. So you can activate this. If you control Blue Eyes, destroy all monsters your opponent controls, but Blue Eyes can't attack. That doesn't matter because Blue Eyes is not what you're going to be attacking with. You're going to be attacking with everybody else because you're going to turn Blue Eyes into a Synchro monster and then you're going to attack. So actually, this card is actually quite decent. Next is Melody. Melody is another C tier tech choice. Honestly, the problem with Melody is, like I said, it's been power crept. Blue Eyes, you do not want to have cards in your hand. You don't want to get the Blue Eyes cards in your hand any longer. It used to be, Melody used to be great because you used to be able to search the Chaos Dragons. You used to be able to search alternative, regular Blue Eyes, free special summons. All of that used to be phenomenal. You really don't want to do that anymore. You want to just use Blue Eyes out of your deck, out of your graveyard. You want to just kind of loop those over and over and over again. So Melody, honestly, is kind of power crept. It's definitely not where it used to be. And it's a decent card. You can still, if you want to run this Lord of D guy, you can still use it. But I think it's just an okay card. Next is Strength and Unity. This is a card that they created to sort of support ritual summoning and, like ritual summoning and fusion summoning for Blue Eyes and Dark Magician. I think this card is like a bad tech choice. It's just okay. This is the definition of a win more card. It's only good after you're already successfully doing everything you want to do. So basically what it does is if you ritual summon or fusion summon using a Blue Eyes or a Dark Magician, you can target a card your opponent controls and then banish it. So again, you have to be already in a decent position for this card to even be useful. It doesn't help you as you're getting there. It helps you once you're already there. Which if you summon a Magia, for example, you're already in a position to be winning the duel. You don't need to banish one card. Like, it's not going to help. If you're summoning a Chaos Max, banishing one card is not going to help you. And then it has another effect where you can target a level 7 or higher normal monster in your graveyard, and you could add it back to your hand or shuffle it back into the deck. That's basically like a recursion card, and then you send this continuous card to the graveyard to do it. Again, it's like, it's just a win more card. It's only good once you've already fusion summoned, once you've already done what you're supposed to, and then you can like banish one card, add one card back. It's just a little bit. What this card is, the perfect way to describe it is it's too little, too late. It's only good after you don't need it anymore. So it's definitely like a bad tech choice. Next is Mausoleum. I think this is probably like an A tier card. You play this in every single combo version of the deck now. It's crazy because a few years ago I really did build a deck. You can look on my channel. I built a deck based around this card, but I'll be honest with you, it wasn't ready. You couldn't search it. Now you can search it. This card is phenomenal. It gives you a double normal summon of light tuners, which is really good because you can summon 2 sages in one turn. Sages on summon effect isn't once per turn. You can search 2 more light tuners. It's insane. You can search 2 more light tuners. It's really, really good. All of these on summon effects on these 3 guys are not once per turn. So even if you use them, they're not once per turn. It actually is kind of insane. You can double normal summon all of them. That's really good. Also has an effect where you can target a monster on your side of the field and then send a normal monster from your deck to the graveyard, and then your monster gains attack times 100 times the level of that monster. It gains attack, but that's not important. It doesn't matter how much attack you gain. It targets a monster on the field, which means it triggers the effect of this maiden, and it triggers the effect of this maiden, and it triggers the effect of her, and it triggers the effect of Protector. It triggers the effect of all of these cards because it targets a card on your side of the field, allowing you to trigger all of the other effects. That is really good. Also, it targets New Maiden too, and it triggers her effect. It targets all of these effects. That effect is really important. The third effect is you can banish this out of the graveyard, and then you can search Burstream of Destruction. That's also important because, again, Burstream of Destruction is a free card you get. You put this in the graveyard anyway, because after turn 1, you really don't need it anymore. You put this into the graveyard, and then you search Burstream for free, and this you could just replace with any other field spell, and it recovers itself, which is kind of nice. And like I said, the best part is it's a one of, and it's searchable now. That's the greatest part about this card. Next is Neutron Blast. This card is horrible. It's the definition of a win more card. Basically, what this card does is you can target a fusion summoned Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon, and that Blue Eyes Ultimate can attack a second and a third time during the battle phase. It's not all monsters, it's in general, which is nice. That is good. And basically, it can attack, and your opponent cannot activate effects until the end of the damage step. Again, that's not terrible. The problem is, the second you activate this card, it's not a quick play. The second you activate this card, your opponent's just going to like find a way to like pop the Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon. It doesn't actually give any protection to the Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon. It just gives it multiple attacks. That's cool and all, but I don't think it's worth playing. It's also not really, it's not searchable because it lists Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon, not Blue Eyes White Dragon. So all of the cards here work with Blue Eyes White Dragon. They don't work with Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon. So this card is actually an unsearchable card. It's an unsearchable win more card. It requires you to already have a Blue Eyes Ultimate, and then it's good. And then it's decent, actually, I should say. And you can't even search it. So overall, it's just a horrible card. It's not even a tech choice. It's just, just don't play this. I honestly think you're better off playing Blue Eye Shining Dragon than you are playing this. It has more upside. It really does. Next is Majesty with Eyes of Blue. This card, I'd say, is probably a tech choice. Now, this is a card that before, I used to put in like Horrible and D, but this card's actually not even that bad anymore. It lets you send a Blue Eyes monster from your hand or deck to the graveyard. So it's like a Foolish Burial. It can send any Blue Eyes monster too, which is good. It can send regular Blue Eyes. It can send Jet. It can send, I don't know, like this, Abyss. It can send any one of those Blue Eyes cards to the graveyard. And then it lets you target a face-up effect monster you control, or target an effect monster on the field, yours or your opponent's, and that monster can't attack. Honestly, not terrible. Number one, it's a Foolish Burial. Number two, it can target either Maiden or New Maiden and trigger its effects. It can target any of the cards that benefit from being targeted. Plus, at Foolish Burials, it's actually like one of the many different aspects of the field spell. This field spell is much better because the field spell already does that, and it's searchable for free. This card is not searchable because it doesn't list Blue-Eyes White Dragon. It lists a Blue-Eyes monster. So technically the field spell is better in almost every single way, but if you wanted a second way to resolve that field spell effect, maybe if this got like popped or something, and your opponent Cosmic Cyclone this, maybe this card could come in handy. But at best, I think it's like a one-of tech choice. You don't want to ever see more than one copy of this card, so it's definitely 100% a tech choice. All right, next is Dragon's Revival Rhapsody. This card's not terrible. Honestly, it really isn't. Basically, if you control a spellcaster, I'd say it's probably like a C tier. It's not bad. It's something that is worth experimenting with because essentially it's a double monster reborn. If you control a spellcaster monster, which you will because there's a ton of really great spellcasters in this archetype, you can target 2 dragons in your graveyard. One of them has to be a normal monster. No big deal. You're playing Blue Eyes. You're always going to have a normal dragon monster in your graveyard. You can special summon them, but then your opponent takes no damage this turn. That is not the end of the world. If you set up an unbreakable board, honestly, who cares? You're setting up an unbreakable board. Who the hell cares if they take no battle damage, especially going first? This is really good. It's also searchable off of the King of D, but unfortunately he, as we've learned, is a little underwhelming because he makes you discard a spell or trap card, which, like I've said before, you don't want to generally discard spells and trap cards. But overall, I think this is a card that maybe isn't being experimented with as much as it should be. Like, I think this card can maybe actually see some decent play in this deck. It actually isn't that terrible of a card. I have to kind of play around with it more, and it is vaguely searchable. I think as a one-of, it actually could be a really, really good tech choice. The other thing that I would say is it is a bit of a win more card also because you already have to have 2 dragons in the graveyard and a spellcaster on the field in order for this card to be usable. So if you start the duel and you're looking at this card and, like, let's say your opponent, I don't know, your opponent imperms this spirit right here, the spirit of the dragon spirit link 1 monster, and you're kind of staring at this card doesn't actually do anything on the field if your opponent stops your first play. It's definitely a little bit of a win more card. It's not a combo starter, it's an extender, but it's a decent extender. I think a tech choice spot is probably pretty good. All right, next is Rage with Eyes of Blue. This is a card that, I'll be honest with you, I have lost to on Master Duel on several occasions. It actually is a fairly good card. There's a deck on Master Duel where you run a bunch of Board Breakers and Sky Striker cards, and then you just go second and you summon 3 Blue Eyes and win. And honestly, as far as that deck goes, I think this card is like a C tier. In Blue Eyes, I don't think it's that good. Maybe as a one-of, but I don't think it's actually that good in that deck, I actually think it's quite decent. Essentially what this card does is you can banish this card, and then you can banish as many other cards that you control as possible. And in your graveyard, you can banish them all face down, and then you can special summon 3 Blue Eyes White Dragons, up to 3 Blue Eyes White Dragons from your deck, and then essentially you can attack because it is a quick play. You can do this. It's essentially a quick play. You can do this. And then for the rest of the turn, you can't normal summon anything else. But so this card has a lot of drawbacks, but overall it's not that terrible. So if you're running like a going second deck, like Raigeki, Harpy's Feathers, all that stuff, you activate that stuff, destroy your opponent's board. You activate this in the battle phase, and then you essentially summon 3 Blue Eyes, do 9,000 damage, you win the duel. It's not the worst strategy in the world. I don't think it's that great in Blue Eyes. Banishing everything face down is a little bit dangerous. You have no recursion. And then the other thing with this card that kind of sucks is that you can actually stop it with like a Mystical Space Typhoon, because this card has to banish itself in order to resolve. So you activate this, your opponent activates Mystical Space Typhoon, targets this, destroys it. This effect doesn't resolve. So it's a little bit fragile, but it's definitely like not the worst strategy in the world. And I'll be honest, like I said, I have lost to it on Master Duel. Sometimes you get in there, you put up a little bit of a board, and your opponent just kind of breaks it real quick and attacks for 9,000. Something I've lost to, I gotta admit it. it's not the worst thing in the world. All right, next up is Vision with Eyes of Blue. This is another card that it's very much a win more card, but I think it's like maybe a tech choice. It's between D tier and tech choice. I think it's top of D or bottom of C. It's like a decent card, and I think with the new support it could be usable, but I'm a little bit mixed on how I feel about it. On activation, it allows you to reveal a Blue Eyes White Dragon from your hand and then special summon any monster from your hand. That's not terrible, but again, you have to have a Blue Eyes to reveal to use this effect. And the new support, we don't want to have Blue Eyes. I keep repeating it, we don't want to have Blue Eyes in our hand. Blue Eyes has to be in the deck, has to be in the graveyard, banished, anywhere other than our hand. We don't want Blue Eyes in our hand. So you have to reveal Blue Eyes, and then you can summon any card, any monster to the field. That's not terrible. Then it has a second effect where you can return either you can return a monster to your hand. If you return a Blue Eyes, you can special summon any monster from your hand, like any monster whatsoever. If you return any monster, like a random monster, you can summon any Blue Eyes from your hand. So in terms of card advantage, this card doesn't actually create any card advantage for you. It just simply allows you to special summon things from your hand. So overall, I don't think it's really that good. I have tried it in the past, but I haven't been successful with it. Now, it could be good with the new support, but as I've tried so far, it really hasn't been. I think it's just kind of a decent, okay card. Next is Soul Successor. This card is kind of a Blue Eyes card. I think this is an okay tech choice. Basically, it lets you target an effect monster your opponent controls, tribute one effect monster, and then target one effect monster your opponent controls, send it to the graveyard, and then special summon one level 7 or higher normal monster from your hand or deck. This card is okay, and it lets you only attack once with it. I mean, it lets you attack only once the turn you activate this effect. I think it's a decent card, Soul Successor. It outs an opponent's monster, it tributes an effect monster, it can trigger other things, and then it also lets you special summon a Blue Eyes to the field. It's not searchable, but as a one-of, I think it's just kind of like a cool one-of to use with Blue Eyes or any sort of like normal monster deck. It's kind of, I'd say it's an okay card. Fluid of Summoning Dragons is probably right next to Lord of D. I don't think that this card is really usable. You need to be playing Lord of D, but I guess the new cards count as Lord of D, so I guess it's fine. It's not impossible to resolve this card, but basically if you control Lord of D, you can special summon 2 dragon monsters from your hand. Again, this whole thing with special summoning from your hand, you don't want to special summon from your hand anymore. It's just not how Blue Eyes is really played anymore, and this is just this is beyond outdated. This is almost 20-something years old. This is like a 25-year-old combo. Obviously, it's not going to be as good as the new combos. It's not even a debate. Silver's Cry is probably like a tech choice. It lets you target a normal dragon monster in your graveyard, special summon it back for free. It is a quick play. This card's not terrible. It can summon back Blue Eyes. It can also summon back Spirit of White because it counts as a normal monster. I remember that effect on it. It's an okay card. I think it's a decent okay card. It's nothing crazy. It can summon back Blue Eyes, but as far as an extender goes, I think it's just kind of an okay extender. It's nothing great. I think C tech choices. It doesn't go beyond that. Ultimate Fusion is probably a mostly played card. If you're playing an all synchro build, like no bricks, no Magia, you don't even play this card whatsoever. So that's the only reason I'm putting this in mostly played. It's at best a one-of. It basically is a free searchable card. It's the way to summon Magia fairly easily. You can summon Magia, you can summon any number of these things because it's a fusion spell that essentially allows you to fusion summon using a Blue Eyes White Dragon or Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon as material, and you have to shuffle away cards from your graveyard, hand, or field into the deck, which is actually pretty decent because it's a lot of different locations that you can shuffle things back from. So it's a little tough for your opponent to maybe like banish and interact with it. So it's actually not bad. And also what's cool is if you have the Ultimate Spirit Dragon, your opponent can't even like call by the grave and like hit one of your cards because you've got this on the field and they can't banish anything. It's actually pretty decent. Your opponent can't banish anything. It's not bad. You can fusion summon the Ultimate Magia. You can fusion summon any one of these things. And then if you had Blue Eyes like face up on your side of the field, you can destroy cards your opponent controls face-up cards your opponent controls equal to the amount of Blue-Eyes cards that you used as fusion material that were face-up on the field, specifically face-up on the field, not the graveyard ones. So if you have like a Blue-Eyes and an alternative, and this counts as Blue-Eyes White Dragon, if you had these two on the field, you can pop equal to the amount of these guys that you used. It's not terrible. You can pop cards. Usually you won't be popping cards. It'll just be this effect right here. It'll just be the fusion summoning effect, nothing else. But still very good, easily searchable fusion card. Next is Bingo Machine Go. I don't like this card. I've never liked this card. I think it's a tech choice. I'm so glad that it's finally been relegated down this low. This card is terrible. It is completely inconsistent. I'm so glad that Wishes with Eyes of Blue has come out, because it is everything that I asked for in a Yu-Gi-Oh card. Bingo Machine Go it's a random card that's supposed to add consistency, but it doesn't add consistency because it's random. So it's kind of a disaster. It lets you reveal 3 Blue-Eyes cards, either 3 Blue-Eyes monsters or spell trap cards that list Blue-Eyes. So there's a lot of cards that get cut out of that. You have to keep that in mind. There's a lot of things that get cut out of everything that this card can search. But yeah, I'd say overall it's kind of a decent card. It doesn't let you search like the stones, for example. It doesn't let you search any of the level 1 tuners. It mostly just lets you search the big bricky monsters, which you don't want to search, and then the spawn trap cards, which you do want to search some of these spawn trap cards, but they're not cards that, the only one that you definitely want to see in your opening hand is this right here, which is the Wishes. You definitely want to see Wishes in your opening hand. So the only reason I would run a Bingo Machine is to guarantee myself to open the Wishes. Other than that, I think this card is overall fairly bricky, and I wouldn't run... You don't really even need to run more than 1 copy of this card, because you have Wishes, so you can just search this, for example, off of True Light or Wishes if you really wanted to. It's just a very unrewarding card to play because it's very inconsistent. Sometimes you reveal 2 cards, like you reveal 2 copies of Wishes and then 1, I don't know, alternative, and you're like, I hope they don't pick alternative, I hope they pick Wishes, and they pick alternative. And sometimes you're like, okay, I really, really need an alternative to hand, and you pick 2 alternatives, and then you pick like a, I don't know, what are we picking here? We pick like a Burst Stream. Please don't pick the Burst Stream, and then they pick the Burst Stream, because it's random. That's the problem with this card. It is a random support. It doesn't guarantee what you're searching. So for that reason, I think it's just always been a bad card. It was kind of this is back when they were just giving really underwhelming support to Blue-Eyes, but fortunately now they're starting to give Blue-Eyes really good support. All right, next up is another unsearchable card. It's Beacon of White. This is easily like an F tier card. It's just not good. It's an equip spell that can summon back a Blue-Eyes from your graveyard, but before you think it's good, you have to already have 3 Blue-Eyes monsters in your graveyard. You summon it back. If this card's destroyed, you banish the Blue-Eyes, and this card gains other monsters your opponent you control can't attack. And then on top of that, it gains attacks equal to the different Blue-Eyes equal to the Blue-Eyes monsters you have in the graveyard. So it has some good aspects to it, but a lot of the aspects to it are very bad, and it's very much a win more card. You already have to have 3 Blue-Eyes in your graveyard to even resolve any of these effects. So obviously, it's just not that great. Next is the Ritual spell for the Paladin of White Dragon. I'd say probably here. It's the same as Paladin of White Dragon. It's nothing special. You wouldn't run Paladin of Dragon, so you're definitely not running the Ritual spell for it. Just overall not really a great card. Next is Dragon's Fighting Spear. This is legitimately one of the worst cards in the entire archetype. I only put it here because Blue-Eyes is on the artwork, but basically it allows you to target a dragon monster that you control that was special summoned this turn, and then for each monster that your opponent special summoned during this turn, it gains an additional attack during the battle phase. The problem is this card, even though it's a quick play, it doesn't give those, it's not like it gives those attacks onto that monster forever. It's only during this turn. So you have to be in a situation where you summon a monster and then your opponent summons a bunch of different monsters on your turn, and that's the only way that this card is actually good. So it just requires, it's a very, very specific card that I don't even know what it really counters. It just gives you additional attacks. But dude, you summon a bunch of these monsters with 4,000 attack. You don't have to play garbage like this. You don't have to do it. We don't have to do it anymore. Just leave it behind. Don't bother with it. It sucks. We don't even have to talk about it. Next is Majesty with the Dragons of White. This card's actually pretty good. I think this is a mostly played card. If you're not playing the fusion build, you are definitely 100% playing this because it is non-targeting destruction removal, which is actually really good. So basically it allows you to reveal 3 Blue-Eyes White Dragons that are in your hand face up on the field or in the graveyard, and then you can destroy cards your opponent controls up to the amount of cards that you reveal. So you can reveal up to 3 blue eyes, destroy 3 cards. And again, that's non-targeting. That's really, really, really scary. Really good too. It has another graveyard effect where you can banish this card and then you can ritual summon with a blue eyes white dragon that you control. That effect is not bad. It's just another like easy, cheesy way to ritual summon where you can destroy, and then you can basically destroy your opponent's cards, and in the same turn you can activate this effect and then immediately like summon a Chaos Max Dragon on your opponent's turn. It's honestly not terrible. Like, you get a free Chaos Max Dragon. Even if you search it with Abyss, you can get a Chaos Max Dragon. It really is not a terrible card. I'd say it's probably in mostly played. You're going to play it in most builds. It's a free searchable card. You can search it off of the Vision. You can search it off of, you wouldn't want to, but you could search it theoretically off of the Bingo Machine. But again, this card is a one-of. It's a one-of. So how do you search a one-of off of a Bingo Machine? You don't. You can search it off of a True Light, which is down here, which is the next card actually. You could search it off the True Light or set it directly off True Light. True Light is another card. I think this is in like high A tier, maybe even S tier. Yeah, it's debatable. I think it's an A or S tier. It's a very good card. It does have a little bit of a drawback, but essentially you can place this for free onto the field with Maiden, just for free. It's there. Wonderful. And then it has multiple effects. One, you can special summon a blue eyes from your hand or graveyard. It gives blanket targeting protection to all blue eyes white dragons. Not all blue eyes monsters, blue eyes white dragons. That's the normal monster, not all of them. So you have to keep that in mind. And then on top of that, you can set a spawn trap card from your deck that lists blue eyes white dragons. So there's multiple ways now to search blue eyes. You've got the not the prayers, the wishes. You have the wishes or the prayers, depending on where you're, what translation you're using. Wishes or prayer. You have True Light, and you have Bingo Machine Go. You have 3 different cards that all search blue eye spawn trap cards. This is much more consistent than Bingo Machine Go. It's a very, very strong card. I would definitely 100% recommend playing it. Great card. Now, the only drawback to it is if this card gets destroyed, it wrecks your own field. That sucks. But what's cool is you can actually protect it with the Spirit. So if Spirit is on the field, you can negate the graveyard effect that would destroy all of your cards by activating Spirit. That's actually quite nice. Next is Ultimate Creature of Destruction. I think this is probably a tech choice. It's a decent tech choice, but again, you're ending on a large synchro board, so I don't know if it's completely necessary. What it does is you can target a blue eyes monster. That turn, that blue eyes monster is unaffected by pretty much, it's unaffected by all card effects, which is kind of nice. And then if your opponent tries to battle it, if they battle it and it's the end of the damage step, you basically get to destroy your opponent's monster. So if they try to destroy it by battle, it's not destroyed. If it's unaffected, it can't be destroyed by battle, and any monster that battles with it is destroyed. It has a bunch of great effects. Also, if this card's in the graveyard and you have a blue eyes white dragon, and you special summon a blue eyes white dragon, you can set this card back to the field free of charge, which is actually kind of cool. It's, like I said, it works with any blue eyes card. Obviously, it's not going to work with Dragon Master Magic. It's not a blue eyes card, but it works with pretty much every other blue eyes card here, which is actually kind of nice. Next is Destined Rivals. This card is, I'd say it's a decent tech choice. I think it goes somewhere up here. It's just kind of another card that you can use, that you can search for free. It's probably up here, it's up here, but it's kind of like one of those cards that you can search for free off of the wishes or the prayers. You can search it off the True Light, like Bingo Machine Go. It's like another card that you can kind of search for free off of all of these different effects. It's definitely, without a doubt, a decent card, but it's nothing like crazy. You have to control a blue eyes or a dark magician, and then you can negate the effects of all face-up monsters your opponent controls. Now, let's be honest, most of the time that's going to be like one monster, because your opponent's going to summon, I don't know, they're going to summon like an Aluber to the field. You're going to activate Destined Rivals, negate the Aluber, and that's it. Like, you're not going to sit there and negate 7 different monsters. You're just going to negate the one monster that they summon. You're not going to negate 12 different monsters. Usually you're not going to do it. Sometimes it can be helpful if you're playing against Yubel, or if you're playing against, I don't know, like I said before, Go, Yubel, or any kind of situation where it helps to negate an entire board of monsters. It can be helpful, but for the most part, it's mostly just kind of like a searchable imperm in a certain sense that you get to set. It's kind of, yeah, it's like an searchable effect Veiler. You just set it, and then during your opponent's turn you can negate something. It's not like outrageously good card. Also, you have to control regular old normal Blue Eyes, so you can't control like the Synchro board. It has to be Blue Eyes. But that is the tier list. Like I said at the beginning of the video, a lot of things have changed. Some things have moved up, some things have moved down. It's completely different than it was a year ago, and definitely completely different than it was 2 years ago. So I'm very excited about this tier list. And yeah, like I said, I'm dropping that combo video, probably deck profiles. I can't wait for the structure deck to come out. Very, very, very exciting stuff. Thank you for watching. La, 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 la.